I stood backstage at the National Youth Achievement Awards, watching through the monitor as my parents settled into their restaurant's private dining room, champagne already poured, celebrating my sister's latest social media milestone. They had no idea that in exactly 12 minutes, my name would be called on live national television. They had no idea because I hadn't told them. In my previous life, I had begged them to come. I had sent them the invitation 3 months in advance, reminded them weekly, even offered to pay for their flights. My mother had promised she'd be there right up until the morning of the ceremony when she'd called to say that Claire had a really important influencer event that needed both parents present for the photos. You understand, don't you, sweetie? Claire's career is at such a critical point. Your little award ceremony will be fine without us. Just take some pictures for us. I had understood. I had always understood. Understanding had gotten me killed. But that was before I died at 27, poisoned by the jealousy that had festered in my family for over a decade. That was before I woke up in my 16-year-old body, the morning after I'd won the regional mathematics competition, with 10 years of memories seared into my brain like a warning from the universe itself. This time, I understood something different. They would never change, so I wouldn't give them the chance. Ms. Rivera, 5 minutes to your segment, a production assistant whispered, adjusting my microphone pack. The award ceremony was being broadcast live on national television, a star-studded event that combined achievement awards with entertainment. My category, Outstanding Youth Contribution to Science, was scheduled right after a performance by one of the country's biggest pop stars. Prime time, maximum viewership. Perfect. I smoothed down my dress, a midnight blue creation that had cost me 3 months of tutoring money. In my past life, I'd worn my mother's old cocktail dress, the one with the broken zipper that I'd had to safety pin closed. My parents had refused to buy me anything new because they'd already spent a fortune on Claire's wardrobe for her latest brand partnerships. Tonight, I wore something that made me feel like the scientist I was becoming, not the afterthought I'd always been treated as. My phone buzzed. A message from Claire. Mom wants to know if you're still mad about the ceremony thing. She says you're being dramatic. We can celebrate with you tomorrow or whatever. I didn't respond. Let them wonder. The thing about being reborn is that you see everything clearly, like wiping fog off a mirror you didn't even know was obscured. I had spent my entire first life making excuses for my family, convincing myself that their neglect was somehow my fault, that if I just tried harder, achieved more, needed less, they would finally see me. I had died still believing that lie. It started when Claire was born. I was 6 years old, already reading at a 5th grade level, already showing signs of the mathematical genius that would eventually earn me scholarships to 3 Ivy League schools. But Claire was beautiful. Claire was social. Claire was everything my parents had apparently wanted in a child, and I became everything they tolerated because they had to. My father, Marcus Rivera, owned a successful chain of upscale restaurants. My mother, Patricia, had been a minor actress before settling into the role of restaurant matriarch and, eventually, momager to Claire's influencer career. They were people who valued image, charm, and marketability. I was the daughter who spent weekends in the library. Claire was the daughter who could light up a room. By the time I was 12 and Claire was 6, the pattern was set. My parents missed my middle school graduation because Claire had a stomach ache that turned out to be gas. They forgot my 13th birthday entirely because they were planning Claire's 7th, a princess-themed extravaganza that cost more than my entire year's allowance. When I won my first major academic competition at 14, they congratulated me with a distracted, "That's nice, honey," before returning to their discussion about Claire's burgeoning Instagram following. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I was above needing their validation. I threw myself into my studies, into research, into anything that would prove I was valuable, even if they couldn't see it. In my previous life, that desperation had nearly destroyed me. After they'd missed my award ceremony, I had still gone home for holidays, still helped fund their restaurant expansion when my first startup began to succeed, still played the role of the good daughter who understood that Claire was special and needed more attention. I had convinced myself that blood was thicker than resentment. I learned the truth too late. At 25, my biotechnology company had developed a breakthrough treatment for a rare blood disorder. At 26, we were valued at over $100 million. At 27, I had dinner at my parents' house to celebrate Claire's engagement, and my sister had poured me a glass of wine that tasted bitter. I had woken up bleeding from my nose and ears, my vision blurring as I realized Claire was standing over me, her face twisted with a hatred I'd never allowed myself to see. "You always got everything," she'd hissed. "The brains, the success, the future. And you didn't even want it. You would have given it all up just for them to love you more. But I actually worked for what I built, and I'm not letting you overshadow me anymore." My mother had found me an hour later. I remembered her scream, remembered the cyruses of the ambulance fading as my consciousness did. I didn't remember dying, but I remembered the realization that had come with my last thoughts. They would choose her. Even in death, they would choose her. And then, I was 16 again, lying in my childhood bedroom, clutching sheets I'd forgotten I'd owned, gulping air into lungs that had stopped working 10 years in the future. The first thing I'd done was vomit. The second thing was cry. The third thing was laugh, because the universe had given me the ultimate gift: foreknowledge. I knew everything that was coming, every mistake, every betrayal, every opportunity I'd missed because I'd been too busy seeking approval from people who would never give it. This time, I would choose differently. The production assistant touched my arm. 2 minutes, Ms. Rivera. You're up right after the commercial break." I nodded, taking a deep breath. On the monitor, I could see the cameras panning across the audience, catching glimpses of proud parents clutching programs with their children's names highlighted. In the restaurant's private room 200 miles away, my parents were probably on their second bottle of champagne, toasting to Claire's latest sponsored post. In my previous life, I had called them from the ceremony, crying, asking why they hadn't come. My mother had been annoyed that I'd interrupted their celebration. My father had told me I was being selfish. Claire had posted a photo on Instagram captioned, "Family dinner, so blessed." That had gotten 50,000 likes while I'd sat alone in a hotel room, my award feeling like a participation trophy I'd given myself. This time, I'd sent them the invitation with a casual, "Got invited to this awards thing? Probably won't win anything. Don't worry about coming." My mother had barely glanced at it before tucking it under a stack of Claire's press clippings. They'd forgotten about it within hours. I hadn't reminded them. I hadn't begged. I had simply let them forget. The same way they'd forgotten me for years, but I'd made sure everyone else would remember. The commercial break ended. The host, a beloved comedian and actor, walked back onto the stage to thunderous applause. "Welcome back, everyone. We have an incredibly special award to present next. The Outstanding Youth Contribution to Science Award recognizes young innovators who are already changing the world. This year's recipient is particularly extraordinary." My heart hammered as footage began to play on the massive screens flanking the stage. It was a video package I'd worked on with the production team for weeks, carefully crafted to tell my story. Not the story of neglect, I wasn't interested in a pity party, but the story of what I'd achieved despite it. The video showed footage from my research lab where I'd spent the past 6 months working on a water purification system that could process contaminated water using bioengineered bacteria. At 16, I had already published 2 papers in peer-reviewed journals, held 3 patents, and my prototype was being tested in disaster relief scenarios. The video included interviews with my research mentor, Dr. Sarah Chen, who spoke eloquently about my extraordinary analytical mind and deeper commitment to using science to solve real-world problems. There were clips of me working with middle school students in underprivileged areas, teaching them basic coding and scientific principles. Footage of me presenting my research at an international conference where I'd been the youngest presenter by a decade. Testimonials from professors, fellow researchers, and community leaders whose lives my work had touched. The video was 3 minutes long, a greatest hits reel of my accomplishments, and it didn't mention my family once, because they hadn't been there for any of it. As the video ended, the host's voice rang out. "Please welcome this year's recipient of the Outstanding Youth Contribution to Science Award, Alexandra Rivera." The applause was deafening. I walked onto that stage with my head high, my smile genuine, my heart finally free of the weight of seeking approval from people who had never deserved to give it. The award was a crystal sculpture of a DNA helix, heavy and cool in my hands, more beautiful than I'd imagined. The host interviewed me for 5 minutes, broadcast live to over 15 million viewers. I talked about my research, about the importance of accessible education, about my dreams of solving water scarcity issues globally. I thanked Dr. Chen, my research team, my teachers, and the students I'd mentored. I didn't mention my parents once. Afterward, backstage, my phone exploded. The first message was from my father. Alexandra, what is this? Why are you on TV? Why didn't you tell us? Then my mother. Everyone is calling us. When was this filmed? Why didn't you say you were receiving an award? This is so embarrassing. Then Claire. You did this on purpose, you manipulative bitch. I smiled at that last one. There she was. The real Claire. The one who would eventually poison me because she couldn't stand living in my shadow. But now there was no shadow for her to hide in. There was only light, blazing and undeniable, and she hated it. The messages kept coming. Hundreds of them. Distant relatives I'd never met, old family friends, my parents' business associates. Everyone who had ever known the Rivera family was suddenly very interested in Marcus and Patricia's daughter, the one who wasn't Claire. My Aunt Rosa, my father's sister, who had always been kind to me, called while I was still backstage. Mija, we just saw. Your parents didn't tell anyone you were receiving this award. We would have all been there. They didn't know, I said simply. There was a long pause. They didn't know, Rosa repeated slowly, and I could hear her understanding exactly what that meant. Oh, Alexandra. It's fine, Aunt Rosa. I'm used to it. No, she said sharply. It's not. It's not fine. It's never been fine. I'm calling your father right now. Don't, I said. But she'd already hung up. Good. Let the dominoes fall. I took my time at the ceremony, networking with the other award recipients, taking photos with scientists and innovators I'd admired from afar. A venture capitalist gave me his card and told me to call him when I was ready to scale my water purification project. A documentary filmmaker wanted to feature my work. 3 universities offered early admission on the spot. My phone kept buzzing. I ignored it. By the time I got back to my hotel room, a suite I'd booked with money from my tutoring business, because I'd learned in my previous life never to depend on my parents for anything, there were over 200 missed calls and 600 text messages. I ordered room service, took a long bath, and only then did I start reading through the messages. My father's texts had evolved from confusion to anger to something approaching panic. This is unacceptable. You made us look like terrible parents. Call me immediately. Your mother is crying. Are you happy? We would have come if you'd told us properly. This is your fault. My mother's messages were more manipulative. Sweetheart, I don't understand why you'd hurt us like this. We've always supported you. Claire is devastated that you'd pull a stunt like this. She thinks you're jealous of her success. Please come home so we can talk about this as a family. Claire's messages were pure venom. I saved screenshots of those. They'd be useful later. But the messages from everyone else told a different story. The narrative was already forming, spreading through social media like wildfire. Did anyone else notice Alexandra Rivera's parents weren't at her award ceremony? Her acceptance speech thanked everyone except her family. What's the story there? I looked up her family. Her parents own the Rivera restaurant chain, and her sister is that influencer Claire Rivera. They post about family constantly, but I can't find a single photo of Alexandra on any of their accounts. Social media was doing what social media did best: detective work and judgment. People were combing through years of my parents' Instagram posts, my mother's Facebook, the restaurant's promotional materials. They were finding exactly what I'd known they'd find: hundreds of photos of Claire, elaborate celebrations of Claire's milestones, proud parental posts about Claire's brand deals and follower counts, and nothing about me. Years of academic achievements, competition wins, published research, invisible. I existed in the family photo archives as a background figure, sometimes cropped out entirely. The internet was not kind about this discovery. By morning, Rivera family was trending on Twitter. The predominant narrative was damning. Successful parents had neglected their genius daughter in favor of their influencer daughter, and it had taken a national television broadcast for everyone to find out. My phone rang. Dr. Chen. Alexandra, she said when I answered. Are you okay? I'm perfect, I said, and meant it. Your family isn't here, I finished. By choice. I'm done pretending that doesn't matter. She was quiet for a moment. Good, she finally said. You deserve better than people who can't see your worth. Now, I just got off the phone with the university president. We'd like to offer you a full research fellowship, effective immediately, full scholarship, your own lab space, a stipend. You'd be working directly with me on the water purification project, and we'd be fast-tracking your undergraduate degree so you can move into graduate work as soon as possible. I closed my eyes, letting the words wash over me. In my previous life, I'd gone to a good school, but not this one. I'd been so desperate for my parents' approval that I'd chosen the university closest to home, thinking if they could just visit more easily, they'd finally pay attention. They'd visited twice in 4 years, both times because Claire had wanted to tour the campus for her own college prospects. I accept, I said. Excellent, we'll handle all the logistics. Oh, and Alexandra? There's a press conference scheduled for this afternoon at the university. Multiple news outlets want to cover the fellowship announcement. Your parents have been calling the university all morning. They want to be included in the announcement. The president wanted to check with you first. I smiled. Tell them they're not invited. When I finally called my parents that afternoon, I was already at the university, prepped for the press conference, wearing another new dress that I'd bought with my own money. My father answered on the first ring. Alexandra, finally! Where are you? We need to talk about this disaster you've created. Disaster? I kept my voice level. I received a national award and a full fellowship to one of the top research universities in the country. That's not a disaster, Dad. That's a triumph. You know what I mean. You've made us look terrible. Do you have any idea how many people have called? How your mother is being treated at the club? The things people are saying about us on the internet? I imagine they're saying you missed your daughter's award ceremony. Because you didn't tell us it was a big deal. You said it was just some awards thing. And you didn't care enough to find out more. Dad, I sent you the invitation 3 months ago. It listed me as a finalist for Outstanding Youth Contribution to Science. That's not some awards thing. But you didn't even read it, did you? You just saw it was my achievement instead of Claire's and dismissed it. That's not fair. Isn't it? When was the last time you came to one of my competitions? When was the last time you asked about my research? When was my last birthday that you actually remembered without me reminding you? Silence. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. I'm moving to university housing next week. I won't be coming home for holidays unless I choose to. I'm financially independent. I have been for years, actually, so you don't need to worry about supporting me. You can go back to focusing on Claire full-time, which is what you've always wanted anyway. Alexandra, you're being ridiculous. I have a press conference in 10 minutes, I said. They're going to ask me about my family. What should I tell them? Another silence, longer this time. I could hear my mother's voice in the background, shrill and panicked. You wouldn't, my father said. I won't lie, I replied. If they ask me if you were at the ceremony, I'll say no. If they ask why not, I'll say you chose not to come. I won't editorialize. I won't tell them about the years of neglect, about how you forgot my 16th birthday last month because you were planning Claire's 20th, about how you've never once visited my lab or asked to read my published papers. I'll just tell them the facts. And Dad, the facts are damning enough. What do you want from us? His voice had shifted from anger to something like desperation. It was the question I'd been waiting for. In my previous life, I would have said, I want you to love me. I would have negotiated, compromised, accepted crumbs, and called them a feast. But I had died learning the truth. You can't negotiate someone into loving you. You can't achieve enough, accomplish enough, or diminish yourself enough to earn affection that was never freely given. Love isn't a transaction, and the version of it my parents offered, conditional, performative, and perpetually just out of reach, wasn't worth having. Nothing, I said. I don't want anything from you anymore. That's the point. I hung up. The press conference was surreal. 20 journalists, cameras everywhere, questions fired, rapid fire about my research, my plans, my inspiration. And yes, eventually someone asked about my family. Ms. Rivera, we noticed your parents weren't at the ceremony last night. Can you comment on that? I paused, making sure my expression was neutral, my voice steady. My parents chose not to attend. I respect their decision. Did they know about the award? I provided them with the invitation and all relevant information. How they chose to prioritize their time is their business. The journalist's eyes sharpened. She smelled a story. Your sister, Claire Rivera, is quite prominent on social media. Does your family typically support both your careers equally? This was the trap, the moment where I could either protect them or tell the truth. In my previous life, I would have protected them. I would have made excuses, smoothed things over, played the role of the understanding daughter who didn't need as much attention, but I had died because of that understanding. I had died because I'd made myself small enough to fit into their narrative instead of demanding they expand their narrative to include me. You'd have to ask them that question, I said. I can only speak to my own experience, which is that I've built my career and achievements independently with the support of mentors, teachers, and colleagues who believed in my work. I'm grateful for everyone who has invested in my success. The subtext was clear. The journalists heard it. By the next news cycle, it would be everywhere. I spent the next week moving into my university apartment, setting up my new lab space, and watching my family implode from a comfortable distance. The internet had done its deep dive and found everything. Someone had uncovered my middle school graduation program where I'd been valedictorian and posted it alongside a family photo from that day where Claire, at 7 years old, was sitting front and center with our parents, while I stood off to the side, partially out of frame. Another person found footage from a local news segment about young inventors featuring 12-year-old me demonstrating an early prototype water filter, and compared it to my parents' Instagram from that same week. 12 posts about Claire's ballet recital, 0 mentions of my invention. The Rivera Restaurant Group's social media was getting destroyed in the comments. How can you post about family values when you couldn't even show up for your genius daughter? Claire gets professional photo shoots, but Alexandra gets ignored? Imagine being so invested in Instagram likes that you miss your kid making national news. My mother tried to do damage control, posting a long, rambling Instagram story about how proud they were of me, how they'd always known I was special, how miscommunication had led to them missing the ceremony. She included a childhood photo of me, the only one she could find, apparently, a 6-year-old me at a science fair with a gap-toothed smile. The internet ripped it apart. You have 10,000 photos of Claire and you had to dig up a picture from when Alexandra was 6? Proud now that she's famous, but where were you for the past 16 years? This is damage control, not love. Claire made it worse. She posted a tearful video talking about how hard it was to be in a family where academic achievement was valued over artistic expression, and how she'd always felt inferior to her genius sister. The response was nuclear. Your parents missed Alexandra's national award to celebrate your Instagram milestone, and you're the victim? You have your parents' attention, money, and support, and you're complaining? The only thing you're inferior at is self-awareness. Claire deleted the video within hours, but screenshots lived forever. My father tried a different approach. He called me directly, his voice rough with exhaustion. Alexandra, please, this is destroying us. The restaurants are getting protest visits. Someone left a 1-star review on every location saying, "We neglect genius in favor of vanity." Your mother can't leave the house without someone confronting her. Claire is getting death threats. Then perhaps you should call the police about the death threats, I said calmly. That's illegal and wrong, and whoever is sending them should face consequences. Is that all you have to say? What would you like me to say, Dad? That I'll post something defending you? That I'll tell everyone this is all a big misunderstanding? I paused. But it's not a misunderstanding. You did miss my ceremony. You did choose not to come. You have built an entire family brand around Claire while erasing me from the narrative. These are facts. I can't unfact them just because the consequences are finally catching up to you. We made mistakes, he admitted, and I heard something I'd never heard from him before. Genuine remorse. We got caught up in Claire's success, in the immediate gratification of social media attention and business opportunities. You were always so independent, so self-sufficient. We thought you didn't need us the way she did. So you punished me for being independent by giving me no choice but to be more independent? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Dad, you're describing a self-fulfilling prophecy. I became self-sufficient because I had to be. Because when I needed you, you weren't there. Let us make it right. Come home. We'll throw you a party. Celebrate your achievements properly. We'll do a whole social media campaign about your research, get you sponsors. No. Alexandra, I don't want a party I have to beg for. I don't want performative celebration that's really about rehabilitating your public image. I don't want to be a prop in the family narrative now that it's convenient for you. My voice was steady, but I felt the weight of years behind every word. I wanted you at my ceremony because you love me and were proud of me, not because it would make good content. That opportunity is gone. You can't retroactively care, Dad. So what, you're just going to cut us off forever? You're going to let this destroy our family? I'm not destroying anything. I'm just refusing to fix what you broke anymore. There's a difference. He hung up. I didn't call back. 3 days later, Aunt Rosa showed up at my apartment with a car full of my belongings from my parents' house and tears in her eyes. I went to visit your parents, she said, helping me carry boxes inside. To tell them exactly what I thought of how they'd treated you. Your mother tried to defend herself, said you'd always been difficult and ungrateful. I asked her to show me one photo album, one scrapbook, one memory box dedicated to you. She couldn't, Alexandra. Not one. Your whole childhood is documented in scattered school photos shoved in drawers while Claire has an entire room full of professionally bound albums. She pulled me into a hug. I'm so sorry. I knew they favored Claire, but I didn't realize how bad it was. I should have said something years ago. It's not your responsibility to parent me, I said, but I hugged her back. No, but it's my responsibility to be a decent human being, and I failed you. I'm not going to fail you anymore. You need anything you call me. Money, support, someone to celebrate with, someone to complain to, I'm here. I cried then for the first time since my rebirth. Not for my parents, but for the relief of having anyone from my family see me clearly and choose me anyway. The semester started and I threw myself into my work. My lab became my sanctuary, my research, my obsession. Without the emotional drain of constantly seeking my parents' approval, I found I had exponentially more energy for everything else. My grades were perfect. My papers were being cited in major journals. My water purification system was being deployed in 3 disaster zones. By October, my parents had gone quiet on social media. The restaurants were surviving but struggling, their family brand image tarnished by the revelation that their family values were selective at best. Claire had pivoted her content away from family-focused posts, now marketing herself as an independent fashion and lifestyle influencer. But her engagement had dropped significantly. Turns out, people who built their brand on relatability didn't do well after being exposed as complicit in bullying their genius sister. I didn't gloat. I didn't have to. I was too busy building an empire of my own. In November, I filed my patents for a second-generation water purification system that could process ocean water into drinking water using minimal energy. The venture capitalist who had given me his card at the awards ceremony invested $5 million in my startup. I hired a team of 5 researchers, all brilliant minds who had been overlooked by traditional academic systems. We were going to change the world. And then, in December, everything came full circle. I received an invitation to speak at the International Science Summit, a prestigious event hosted annually in Geneva. I would be the youngest keynote speaker in the summit's 50-year history. The speech would be broadcast globally with an expected viewership of over 100 million people. The invitation came with a +2 for family. I called Aunt Rosa and Dr. Chen. They both cried when I asked them to come. I didn't tell my parents, but I knew they'd find out. The summit was even more spectacular than the awards ceremony had been. World leaders, Nobel laureates, innovators who had shaped the last century, and me, 17 years old, about to present my research on sustainable water solutions to an audience that could actually implement them on a global scale. I wore white, stark and clean, the color of possibility. My speech was 30 minutes long, carefully crafted to be both scientifically rigorous and emotionally compelling. I talked about growing up understanding that the world was facing a water crisis, about the nights I'd spent in my childhood bedroom sketching designs for filtration systems, while the rest of my family celebrated achievements I'd never be included in. I talked about turning loneliness into focus, about using the time others spent seeking approval to instead seek solutions. I talked about how the greatest innovations often come from people who have learned to rely on themselves because no one else was reliable. The standing ovation lasted 4 minutes. Backstage, my phone erupted again, but this time the messages were different. Aunt Rosa, I'm so proud of you, I can't stop crying. Dr. Chen, that was one of the most powerful speeches I've ever heard. You're going to change the world. And then, from my mother, we've been watching everything. We made a terrible mistake. My father, your mother is in therapy, so am I. We're trying to understand how we failed you so badly. I know it's too late, but I need you to know we see it now. Claire, I'm sorry. I know you have no reason to believe me, but I'm sorry. I was jealous and cruel, and I let Mom and Dad's favoritism poison me. You deserved better from all of us. I stared at the messages for a long time. In my previous life, this was all I'd wanted. Acknowledgement. Apology. The admission that I had been wronged. But I had died and been reborn, and in the process, I'd learned something crucial. Apologies that come only after public humiliation aren't really about remorse. They're about image rehabilitation. Real change happens quietly, privately, without an audience demanding it. I didn't respond to my parents or Claire. Instead, I typed a message to my new team of researchers. Just got confirmation on the UN partnership. We're going to be deploying systems in 15 countries by next quarter. Meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. to start planning. Then I put my phone away and went to dinner with Aunt Rosa and Dr. Chen, where we toasted to the future and laughed about the absurdity of my success, and I felt more loved in that moment than I had in my entire first life combined. 2 months later, my parents showed up at my lab. I was working on a prototype when security called. Ms. Rivera, your parents are here. They don't have an appointment, but they're asking to see you. I could have said no. Part of me wanted to, but I was curious about what they thought they could possibly say that would matter now. They looked older somehow. My mother had lines around her eyes I didn't remember. My father's hair had gone grayer. They stood in my lab's reception area like strangers, out of place among the equipment and the bustle of researchers moving between experiments. Alexandra, my mother said, and her voice broke. Thank you for seeing us. You have 15 minutes, I said. I have a prototype test at 3. We went to my office, a small space lined with awards, patents, and framed photos of my team's successes. Not a single family photo among them. My mother noticed. I saw her eyes scan the walls, searching for evidence that she'd mattered in my life, finding nothing. We've been in therapy, my father started, individual and couples, trying to understand how we became the kind of parents who could... He gestured helplessly. Who could fail you so completely? We thought we were doing the right thing, my mother added quickly. Claire was struggling, socially, emotionally. She needed so much attention, so much support. You were always so brilliant, so capable. You thought I didn't need you because I'd learned to stop asking, I interrupted. There's a difference between not needing support and realizing support isn't coming. She flinched. We know that now, my father said. Well, Mom, we know we made you feel invisible in your own family. We know we prioritized Claire's wants over your needs. We know we failed to celebrate you, support you, or even see you most of the time. He took a breath. We know we don't deserve your forgiveness. We're not here to ask for it. Then why are you here? To tell you that we're proud of you, my mother said, tears streaming down her face. Not because you're famous now, not because you've accomplished incredible things, but because despite us, despite everything we put you through, you became exactly who you were meant to be. You didn't let our neglect break you. You built something beautiful out of the loneliness we forced on you. And to tell you that we're going to do better, my father continued. Not for you. We understand we lost that right. But Claire, we realized we failed her too. We taught her that attention was more valuable than achievement, that being seen was more important than being substantial. We turned her into someone who cared more about appearances than authenticity, and that wasn't fair to her either. I thought about my previous life, about Claire's twisted face as she'd watched me die, about the jealousy that had been festering for years because our parents had created a zero-sum game of their affections. They hadn't just failed me, they'd poisoned both of us in different ways. Claire is taking a break from social media, my mother said. She's going back to school studying psychology. She wants to understand why she became who she became. She asked us to tell you that she's not asking for a relationship with you, but she's trying to become someone who would deserve one. I sat back in my chair processing. This was more than I'd expected. This was actual accountability. What do you want from me? I asked. Nothing, my father said, and I believed him. We just needed you to know that we see what we did. We see what we destroyed, and we're not going to make excuses for it anymore. They left after that, quietly, without demanding hugs or reconciliation or absolution. It wasn't healing. Wounds like mine didn't heal with a single conversation, but it was something. An acknowledgement that the wound existed. I went back to my prototype. 6 months later, my company was acquired by a multinational corporation for $300 million. I retained full creative control and a position as chief scientific officer with my team intact and our mission expanded. We would be deploying our water purification systems to 50 countries within the year. I was 18 years old, a multimillionaire, and the youngest chief scientific officer in the corporation's history. The press went insane. I did interviews with every major publication, appeared on morning shows and late-night programs, became the face of young innovation in STEM fields. Every interviewer asked about my family. Every time I gave the same answer. I'm grateful for everyone who supported me along the way. I never elaborated. I didn't have to. The story was already out there, documented in social media archives and news articles from the previous year. People knew. In April, I received an invitation to speak at my high school graduation. Despite having left early for university, the principal wanted me to address the graduates as an example of what was possible with dedication and self-belief. I accepted with one condition: the ceremony would be live-streamed. Standing at that podium, looking out at a sea of graduating seniors and their proud parents, I felt the weight of both my lives converging. In my previous life, my parents had shown up to my high school graduation but left immediately after to take Claire to an audition. I'd taken photos with friends' parents because mine couldn't be bothered to stay. This time, Aunt Rosa sat in the front row beaming, Dr. Chen beside her. My entire research team had flown in, wearing matching t-shirts with our company logo. The auditorium was packed with people who had chosen to be there for me. My parents weren't invited. When I was younger, I began, my voice carrying through the space, I thought success was about making people see you. I thought if I achieved enough, accomplished enough, won enough awards, the people who mattered would finally pay attention. I paused, letting the words settle. I learned something important. The people who matter are the ones who pay attention before you win awards. The people who matter show up not because you're successful, but because they believe you will be, and they want to be part of that journey. I saw parents in the audience shift uncomfortably, saw students nodding in recognition. You're going to face people who don't see your value. Sometimes those people will be strangers. Sometimes they'll be teachers, mentors, or colleagues. And sometimes they'll be family. My voice stayed steady. The question isn't whether you'll face this. The question is, will you let their blindness define your vision? I talked for 20 minutes about resilience and self-belief, about building your own support system when the one you're born into fails you, about the difference between seeking approval and seeking excellence. I talked about how the world is full of people who will underestimate you, and how their underestimation is their loss, not your limitation. The speech went viral within hours. Alexandra Rivera calls out toxic family dynamics in graduation speech. Teen millionaire entrepreneur tells graduates not to wait for validation. watch this powerful speech about succeeding despite neglect. My parents released a statement through their publicist. We are proud of Alexandra and respect her choice to share her truth. We take full responsibility for our failures as parents and wish her continued success. It was professional, distant, exactly what I expected. They were learning to let go. Claire reached out directly, a long email that I read 3 times before responding. She detailed her own journey in therapy, her realization of how our parents' favoritism had twisted her into someone she didn't like, her genuine remorse for how she'd treated me. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't ask for a relationship. She just wanted me to know that she was trying to be better. I wrote back, "Thank you for telling me. I hope you find peace in becoming who you want to be." It wasn't reconciliation, but it was closure. Sometimes that's enough. A year later, I was 19, traveling to disaster zones personally to oversee the implementation of our water systems. I was there when a village in drought-stricken East Africa got clean water for the first time in months. I was there when children drank from our filtration system and their mothers cried with relief. Those moments were worth more than any award ceremony. But the universe has a sense of humor because in November, I received another invitation. The Nobel Peace Prize Committee wanted to meet with me. I was being considered for the prize for my work in water accessibility and sustainability. At 19, I would be the youngest nominee in history. The nomination alone made international news. My phone rang, my mother. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "Alexandra," she said, her voice careful. "I know I have no right to call, but I needed to tell you. We saw the news about the Nobel nomination. And I need you to know that I understand now what we threw away. Not the success, not the fame, the chance to know you, to really know the extraordinary person you became." She took a shaky breath. "You don't owe me anything. Not forgiveness, not a relationship, not even this phone call. But I needed to tell you that if I could go back, if I could redo every moment, I would choose to see you, every single time." "I know," I said quietly, but you can't go back. None of us can. We only get to go forward." "Are you happy?" she asked, and she sounded genuinely curious, like she was asking about a stranger she'd once known. I thought about my team, my work, the villages with clean water, the children who would grow up healthy because of systems I'd designed. I thought about Aunt Rosa's weekly calls, Dr. Chen's mentorship, the found family I'd built from people who had chosen to see me. "Yes," I said, I'm happy." "Good," she whispered. "That's good." We hung up. I didn't cry. I didn't feel anger or regret. I felt peaceful, the kind of peace that comes from knowing you've survived something that should have broken you and came out stronger on the other side. In December, I won the Nobel Peace Prize. I wore gold to the ceremony, radiant and unapologetic. My speech was about the democratization of resources, about how innovation means nothing if it doesn't reach the people who need it most. I talked about water as a human right, about the responsibility of scientists to serve humanity, not just advance knowledge. I thanked my team, my mentors, my Aunt Rosa, and every teacher who had believed in a lonely girl with impossible dreams. I didn't mention my parents, but they were watching. The ceremony was broadcast globally. In their home 200 miles away, I learned later from Aunt Rosa, they watched their daughter accept the world's most prestigious award, and they cried. Not tears of pride, though there was that. Tears of grief for all the moments they'd missed, all the years they could have known me and chose not to, all the memories they could have had if they'd just paid attention. They cried because they finally understood what they'd lost, and they understood they'd lost it by choice. It was, I thought, the most fitting punishment I could have given them. Forcing them to watch my triumph from a distance, to know they had no claim to it, no part in it, no right to celebrate it as family because they'd forfeited that right years ago. In my previous life, I had died begging for their love. In this life, I had succeeded without needing it. And that, I realized as I held the Nobel Prize medal, heavy and cool in my hands, while the world applauded, was the sweetest revenge of all. The epilogue to this story isn't dramatic. There was no final confrontation, no tearful reunion, no moment where my parents and I fell into each other's arms and declared all was forgiven. Instead, there was distance, respectful, permanent distance. They sent birthday cards, which I acknowledged with brief thank you texts. They donated to my foundation, anonymously at first, until I told them I'd rather they did it in their own names. Let their money do some good, even if their parenting hadn't. We existed in each other's orbits like distant planets, close enough to acknowledge but too far to touch. Claire and I developed a careful friendship over email. She never asked to see me in person, and I never offered. She sent me updates about her psychology degree, her work with young women struggling with social media addiction. I told her about my latest projects. It wasn't sisterly love, but it was honest, and honesty was something our family had never managed before. Aunt Rosa became my emergency contact, my +1 to events, my phone call when things went wrong or right. Dr. Chen was the mentor I'd needed, the maternal figure who showed up. My team was my family, bound by mission and mutual respect. I was 25 when I looked back at my rebirth and realized I'd gotten everything I'd never known to ask for in my first life. Not my parents' love, that ship had sailed, sunk, and dissolved into the ocean floor. But something better, self-respect, autonomy. The knowledge that I could survive without them and thrive because of it. The water systems I'd designed were operating in 70 countries. 1 million people had access to clean water because of my work. I'd published 15 papers, held 23 patents, and had been offered positions at every major research institution in the world. I chose to stay independent. I'd learned the value of that early. Sometimes, late at night in my lab, I thought about my previous life, about dying on my parents' floor, watching Claire's hateful face blur into darkness, understanding too late that I'd spent 27 years fighting for love from people who were incapable of giving it. The rebirth had been a gift, but not for the reasons I'd first thought. It wasn't a chance to make them love me. It was a chance to stop needing them to. It was a chance to let go. I did. And in letting go, I found everything I'd been searching for: purpose, peace, and people who chose me not because they had to, but because they wanted to. My parents had to live with what they'd lost. I got to live with what I'd built. In the end, that was justice enough.